Hello, Dude Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York, folks. Very excited to be here with you today. Today happens to be my favorite day. And we're very excited, the royal we, very excited to be meditating with you here today. Very excited to, hang out, have a good time. As I tuck myself in here, I got my blanket wrapping it all around. Tuck it into my yoga pants, or whatever these things are, exercise pants. Folks, how you doing? What's going on? How's life? We're going to meditate. I feel extra funny today, I think in part because a friend of mine convinced me they didn't do a lot of convincing, but he just talked about he's been doing cold showers in the morning. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just give that a try. And I got up and boy, what a kick in the pants that is. If you want to skip coffee, consider doing cold showers, boy, that will wake you up. Okay, folks. So as people begin to trickle in here, oh, good, Gene is already here with us. Welcome, Gene. I want you to hit me in the chat. What are we talking about here? Where am I? BK. Grateful for a cold ass shower. That was a very cold shower. And it was just a few seconds long. It was not long, but when I transitioned to coldness, it was like, it was a punch. It was fun though. I had a good time. The result was very peppy. So, Gene, good day all the way from Brooklyn. Grateful for the sensation of things falling into place. Isn't that lovely when things feel like they're falling into place? Let's see. Julia says, hello from Vienna. Welcome. Let's see. Why is this? Sorry, it's so far over on my screen. Let's just move it over. There we go. Hello from Vienna. Grateful for the hunch that made me type internal family systems into the DHO search box to discover your stream. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. I didn't know that. Okay. Well, interesting. I didn't even know. I'm always sometimes amazed that we're even mentioned on there. Not that it's like whatever. I mean, I just talked to Daniel the other day, but it is, I forget. I found it so impossibly hard to post things on the Dharma Overground, like just impossible. I was just like, how is it possible? And then I always ask Daniel, he's like, oh, the button's right there. But it's like, I looked for a long time. So I just never interact with it. Okay, so glad you're here, Julia. Julia says, I used to do cool, not completely cold, which actually is how I did the studies of cold showers and depressions. Oh, it's how they did the studies. Oh, it wasn't cold. Interesting. I heard that the studies actually are not super well substantiated, but they are, it's a good place to start. It's a good indication of something that might be significant, statistically. Folks, I have a delicious, very foamy matcha here. I don't know if you can see this. It's going to spill if I go too far over, and I can go all the way to there. Delicious, pure foam from top to bottom, matcha. Very happy to be sharing that with you. If you ever want to know my ultimate matcha recipe, I'll tell you. Excellent. Brian, welcome. Good morning from New Orleans. Brian, tradition here, if you haven't been here before, is hit us with what is, where you're at. You already mentioned that, and one thing you're grateful for. It's been proven, there is some solid science behind this. The people who list, I think the studies were around 3 things they're grateful for, tend to have a greater sense of well-being. So well-being is a very positive attributes here. So let us know what you're grateful for at this moment. Denny says, coming from Harlem, grateful for my Kindle. Lovely. I love a good Kindle. I've never used one so much, but I like how matte they are. Lovely and matte. Okay, let's see here. I really think this cold shower shifted something loose in my head. Something's weird. Okay, 613 style says, if you think cold showers are great, wait till you try a hot one. Oh, wow, that sounds really nice. I can imagine that being like a whole new thing. Exactly, I got to try that out. Okay, folks, I'm very excited that excuse me. The matcha is kicking up, making my throat a little funny. Folks, I'm very excited for today, and I'm excited that we get to meditate today. I just guided a student, one of my one-on-one students, and it was really fruitful and felt really good. So I think we're just going to do that meditation. How do I describe the meditation? So we're going to be observing awareness, and I'm trying out a new set of ways of teaching meditation. It's a funny thing about being a meditation teacher who's like, I don't know, meditation technology driven and constantly taking in new information and, you know, working with friends who are teachers and just, you know, et cetera, is I have to rewrite my whole system over and over again. This is maybe something I absorbed from Shinzen, but I'm going to be thinking about teaching the path of, you know, deep meditation in a different way. And so I'm trying new pieces here. So thank you guys for being guinea pigs. And today we're going to try out one of these pieces and then expand it out to something hopefully fun, hopefully interesting, hopefully not too challenging, hopefully challenging enough. Yeah, thanks folks for joining us here. If anyone hasn't already, let us know where you're at, one thing you're grateful for, and then we'll rock and roll from there. After the meditation, I'm going to encourage folks to tell me what their experience was like, what happened, and what you're like after the meditation itself. And we're going to open up the Discord if people want to chat and speak their reports, which often is, I guess I realize some people I think might be nervous that we're live, and so it's like, oh my god, speaking live. But just a pro tip, anytime you speak, you're speaking live. So that's you know, that's that. And if public speaking is something that you want to be better at, I can walk you through meditation wise how to do it live, which would be a very good you know, exercise, because it's happening live. So if anyone feels nervous in that way, perfect time. Perfect. Guys, I'm double fisting my beverages here. I got a container of alkalized, electrolyzed water and a delicious matcha here. So excited to blast off with a liquid meditation. I don't know what that means. Sounds terrible, though. The implications are terrible. Okay. So, folks, we're going to be practicing. Hello there. Let's see here. Lil Gilver. Is that Lil Gilvert? Lil Gilvert 19? It's a tough one. You're really making my tongue do a workout. Lil Gilvert. Welcome, Lil Gilvert. Lil Gilvert, I don't know that I've seen you here on the stream before. Is that true? Is that true? Okay. No. It's just 9. Lil Gilvert 9. Okay, Lil Gilvert 9. Just making sure. Have we seen you on the stream before? I don't know. I don't think we have. Let us know if this is your first time in the stream. I think maybe it is. Okay. Gene has made the assessment. This is your first time in the stream. We have a way of welcoming you on the first time in the stream. I don't know why our wall doesn't work anymore, but it doesn't. And so whatever, we'll make it work. But thank you, welcome. We're just gonna hit you with some emojis here. Whoever's new, we want to get them a nice welcome feel. So welcome again and again. Welcome, folks. We're going to be meditating for 25 minutes. So if that sounds crazy, don't worry. 25 minutes will go by either way. You'll either have meditated or not. So I suggest that you come with us on this meditation journey. And let's see, and what else? And meditation journey, 25 minutes. Oh, I'm going to encourage folks to practice in stillness. So if you have any urges to adjust the body in any way, we're just going to ignore those. Ignore those urges, people. And of course, you can make adjustments under 2 conditions. One, you just want to. Just make sure you do so very slowly, mindfully, that kind of thing. And then two, if overwhelm is even creeping in a tiny bit, you want to make a minor adjustment. If it keeps creeping in, make a bigger adjustment, that kind of thing. And at the end, we'll talk about our meditation, what happened and what we're like now. Okay, folks, so find a nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit, arranging the body well so that you don't have to use any muscles at all, if at all possible. Actually need to make an adjustment because I'm using muscles. I prefer to use my spine and balance. Okay, we'll go from there. So forgive me today. I have a little bit of a frog in my throat. So that may come up in the meditation itself. We'll find out. And we'll start from here. Okay, folks, so find that nice comfortable position that you can maintain. And when you're ready, I'm going to turn that down. Oh, yeah. Look at that lighting. So much nicer. Yeah. Okay, when you're ready, we'll begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths. Just feeling the body rise and fall. Each time we begin a meditation, we begin with the momentum of all of the previous moments. In the way that we discover the kind of mind we're arriving to this particular moment with is by observing our current senses. So just noticing that experience of the body rising and falling as the breath comes and goes. And as we physically relax the body, relaxing the large muscle groups in the body, remembering that we can physically relax more than we can physically feel. So relaxing the head, including the muscles behind the eyes, the back of the tongue, the neck and shoulders, relaxing the arms and relaxing the hands. Letting go of any attempt to control the breath, just letting the body breathe as it will. And noticing the natural tightening and relaxing of the upper chest and upper back as the breath comes and goes. Relaxing the belly and the lower back. Relaxing the hips, the legs, and relaxing the feet. And even if the body feels like it's already relaxed, we're going to go further, relaxing more than we can even physically feel. Relaxing all the way down to the level of the bone. And we'll begin by opening up to a general snapshot of all of our experience. So we're not trying to capture any particular detail, just letting the periphery open to all seeing, hearing, and feeling as one large category. And this is where we're going to reside for a good portion of this meditation, is in this overall sense. As though the mind were observing from the periphery, taking in all that's available as one big category. And each time we notice this large totality, general soft cloud of sense experience, because it's the whole of our experience, we'll call it whole. And the mind saying the word whole, soaking in, letting go, and then starting again. So every few moments, we're simply taking in what is the overall experience in this moment. We're titling that whole in the mind, soaking in, letting go, and starting again. Remembering that each time the totality may be different, and that's fine. We're simply trying to observe whatever the totality is at this moment. Noticing that observing in this way means There are no distractions. Everything that can be experienced is part of the meditation. So relaxing into this. There's no way we can go wrong. But of course, the mind is clever. Sometimes the mind can want to be distracted. And the way that the mind distracts us in this form of meditation is it will show us parts rather than showing us the whole. That's not a problem. It's simply a tiny part. So anytime we notice anything in particular, any part or particle, any unique sensation separate from the whole, in the mind we simply call that part. So if we're observing this overall totality, we label it whole in the mind, and then suddenly the mind is drawn to the sensations of the left hand, for instance, or a sound, or some other particular sensation. We notice this, in the mind we say part, and then reintroduce that part to all of the sensations around it until we once again find the whole. In this way, our entire world is part of the meditation. At times the mind notices the totality, the whole, and at times the mind notices particles or parts. Remembering that if we observe any part, introducing it to all of the sensations around it, and training the mind that the part can actually show us the path back to the whole. If we get distracted, as soon as we recognize this, just noticing, was the distraction more of a part, which is usually the case, or were we distracted with the overall experiencing? Whatever it is, introducing it to the larger sense experience, all sensing, and labeling that whole. Noticing if there's any struggle or challenge. Noticing if any part of us is assessing some part that feels like this is going wonderfully or this is going terribly. And including this is simply another example of a part. And introducing that to the whole. For a moment, letting go of any technique, any labeling, and just letting the system take in the overall experience. And perhaps noticing that when we do this, when we simply allow ourselves to rest in an overall sense sphere, an overall experiencing, it's very much like the practice we've been doing. The mind will take in a large swath and then occasionally dart from one detail to a next. And so noticing that even without doing anything, this is already happening. This is how the mind works. Moving between these different ways of experiencing. And for a moment, noticing that this awareness, this aspect of the mind that simply knows our experience, this is what we've been calling whole. Noticing how light this experience is. It knows, has contact with, experiences whatever it touches, as though it were a kind of layer that wraps anything it comes in contact with. But noticing it's thinner, lighter than any fabric. Even a thin layer of silk would be thousands or millions of times heavier than this awareness, even a spider web. Would be heavier than how light this awareness is. So we're simply attending to this quality, this lightness of awareness. No matter what it's aware of, the awareness itself is remarkably, almost impossibly light. Imagining for a moment that this lightness was a kind of refuge, something we might learn to rely on, return to. Learn from. And would it feel pleasant or fulfilling to turn ourselves in this moment over to that lightness, if it's available? To learn from it by giving ourselves over to it. And staying with the practice. Staying in stillness, allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes, eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point, as they fully open. Again, staying with the practice, staying in stillness. Noticing that here too the mind can observe parts, details, perhaps the point we're looking at, or specific things in our periphery. And the mind can also take in the overall experience of seeing. One soft category. And in this way, recognizing that this moment, as we sit here with our eyes open, as we do much of our day, this is the great teacher. That which shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. Great. So tell me, folks, what was that experience like? What happened? And what are you like now? Excellent. Lil Gilvert 9 says, I came from my boy Johnny. Lovely. Glad to hear it. So, folks, what was that experience like? What happened and what do you like now? And tell me about your experience. We got a little in the thick of it there, so it might be a little challenging, might have been a little surprising or confusing or any of those things. So, yeah, what was that experience like? What happened and what do you like now? And what I'll do here is I'm going to pop up our beep voice waiting room. I don't know why I'm in the voice waiting room. That was a mistake. But I'm going to give you the link. Oops, I just closed Discord. A link to our Discord to chat if you would like to chat. Nope. Why do I keep hitting that button? There we go. Okay. There is our chat button. And we will listen to reports here. What this experience was like for folks. Okay. We have Wanderejo. Tell me how to pronounce that. Wanderejo says,
Hello, had my first jhana-related experience this week and I find some underlying frustration for not getting there. Any suggestions on how to lose expectations on your meditation sessions?
How to lose expectations on your meditation sessions. The biggest way to, this is a universal rule, the biggest way to get rid of a thing that is mind-created is to know it, to see it clearly, because mind-created things are just phantoms. And we start to find over more and more time that all of our experiences to some degree are mind-created. So I would just know the experience. The problem is, and this is the question for you, Wanderejo. You're probably going to tell me how to pronounce that soon. Oh, great, you did. Wanderejo. Which syllable? Tell me which syllable. Wanderejo. What is your object of meditation? What are you using? Are you using the breath? Often people will use the breath, or are you using some other sensation? What is your object of meditation? I can answer the question more clearly related to, let's see what you say here, is underlying frustration and letting go of expectations. So the challenge, I'll just say it right now, the challenge that arises is if you use, let's say, the breath, your motivations or your drives or the different parts that are, the different unconscious pieces, they're outside of your practice. So you're generally going to just ignore those because you're paying attention to the breath, but then there's the impulse of the expectation of these things. They're kind of intruding in, so you just ignore those, and then you get really stable in the breath ideally. But if you can open up the meditation to include those, well, now you can metabolize them, and you're not just fighting and trying to push them away. You're now, because you're including them, they can't fight in the background to be like digging in, and pushing and pulling you. So essentially, you want to include them. Now, I have a very specific meditation technique that I like to use to help people through that exact thing, and especially if they're interested in jhana or that kind of unification experience. And actually, as luck might have it, I've been teaching it recently. Today's the first day I didn't teach that. Let me look really quick, because I think it's at least the last 2 live streams we have used those specific techniques. Let me take a peek here. Calming the nervous system, definitely they're balancing. Okay, great. So basically, our live stream on the 20th and the 22nd. Oh wait, maybe even actually 22nd, 25th. Yes, 22nd and 25th. We use both of those. Basically, the practice is what I call this and not this. I won't explain the whole practice because it'll take forever. I'll just suggest that you go take a look at those here. If you ever want to find out the links, you just type !links. And the second YouTube channel here, youtube.com/deepmindfulness2, has all of our playbacks for all of these things with time codes. So you can just scroll down and see the time code and make, the meditations here are these questions that I'm interested in these different time codes. So check it out. The last 2 live streams, meaning the 22nd and 25th, were the beginning part of that. We'll use the technique that I'm suggesting, which basically is that whatever your object of meditation is, you title it this, and it's very specific. You never use that word in the practice without really meaning it is exactly this. And then when a distraction arises, and this includes the agitation, why am I not? It should be like this. It's supposed to be. Okay, cool. That's not a problem, right? It's just not this. And so whatever it is, you say, okay, that's not this. But even when you use that phrase, not this, again, the word this is included. So you make sure you say, okay, this distraction is sound or this impulse or whatever. What is it? It's not something. It's not this. And we start to learn that we can hold all experiences, all distractions, etc., in a way that points right back to this. All of not this starts to point towards this. If we again and again and again teach it, whenever we see, okay, it's not something specific, it's not this. In that way, all distraction actually becomes a funnel towards the object of meditation, and then there can be this unified experience of all of this together, where no longer is it this fighting not this, it's actually all of not this supporting and pointing to this. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Hopefully that's fun and interesting to try and work on. Okay, so, and again, the pronunciation is Wandreyo. Excellent. So now, let me hit you. Julia Temple says,
amazingly peaceful sit, lots of mental talk but almost no resistance to it. Clinging and aversion in general were much fainter than they usually are for me. Some dullness, so I occasionally opened my eyes and let the body yawn on its own. When we let go of the technique, I drifted off, and I'm not sure I found the lightness you spoke of, but that's okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I mean, part of what I'm just describing, and it may or may not have been available, the lightness quality that we talked about at the end, is that the part of the mind that knows experience is incredibly, it barely touches the experience. It's not like it has to grab onto things. Things feel very solid, but the part of the mind that knows them, that experiences them, the awareness is extremely gentle and soft. So maybe that's available, maybe it's not. If it's not, no big deal. Don't sweat it. Awareness tends to have these general qualities. It tends to be it can be very light, it can be very quiet, it can be very spacious, it can feel very still. Not all of these all the time, not all of these for everybody, but these are things you can look for that are exciting and interesting for fun. Okay. Jean says, and Jean has a correction here, bring attention. So let's see, there's some misspelling in here, which we should replace with bring attention. I'll just imagine that every word here is supposed to be bring attention, bring attention, bring attention. Here we go.
Very peaceful. I still feel a little dazed, but in a good way. It felt easy today to being attention, back to the whole.
Great.
Compared to Monday, when I was doing a bunch of stuff right before the stream and felt a bit frantically late, I came much more prepared and therefore it felt easier to settle my mind.
To bring attention. Yeah, so great. And that's the case. Sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's not. And part of what we're learning in meditation is how to calm the nervous system to the point where it can observe this stuff. And like we come on with this big rush of momentum, racing mind, etc. And part of it is if we just know that experience, we're no longer caught in it. In a way, it's like zooming out to see the entire weather formation versus being caught in the middle of the cyclone kind of thing. Excellent, excellent. Okay, Julia Temple here, hitting us again with some data. Julia Temple says,
I like the hold part labels because they have only one syllable. That enables me to label parts late when I'm at whole and notice that I just returned from having drifted off. Not sure if you recommend labeling late. I got that from Juliana Ray.
Yeah, so that principle comes from Shinzen. That's Juliana Ray and I both share a common teacher. And Shinzen says you can label, late, you can guess, you can be entirely wrong. You can use a label to label a bunch of experiences rather than one experience or several little ones. You can slow down the labels so that a lot of stuff comes and goes and you miss it, and then you just label every once in a while if you want to slow the observing down. All of those are totally valid perspectives. Okay, Wanderyo says, hopefully I'm getting that right, I'm double checking. Wanderyo, there we go, Wanderyo says,
so my object of meditation was the breath, up until I dropped the attention of breath and I kind of let attention be itself, and there I found this very powerful energy felt in the body. Still felt thoughts were arising but I kind of ignored them, which was quite weird considering it's my first time feeling it. Felt like I tapped into the natural mind, of sorts, and could sit for way more than normal.
Great. Lovely. So one thing that I tend to talk about specifically is this relationship of attention and awareness. And maybe this is something you're familiar with, so if it is, forgive me for being pedantic or whatever, repetitive. Basically, attention is the part of the mind that separates things out, and awareness is what we're working with today that can take in an overall experience or even a segmented overall experience. So we could detect all of the sensations in the body as one. Or all sensation altogether as one, but it's the part that takes more than one part and just sees them together. They each have their different qualities. Attention tends to be very detailed, but it slices the world into pieces, and in order to stay with attention, you have to ignore a lot of stuff. You're like zoomed in, and you're like ignore. So the practice that I described earlier, the practice was this and not this, and what happens is we're zoomed in on this thing, and everything else that happens is in awareness. What we're calling not this is basically our connection to awareness. We have one big name for it, which actually helps the mind take it in as one category. And at first they're fighting each other, and eventually attention and awareness can kind of balance with each other. And what happens is that point, the thing we're looking at is like a bullseye on a target. And the target, the awareness, holds the bullseye actually, rather than the two fighting each other. And so that is often when the system gets balanced, and the system then gets into like its own momentum of like being very stable there. But just know that especially jhana practice is just this very time-based technical training that can feel a little dry because it either works or doesn't depending on the conditions, and we just hammer away at it, hammer away. If it feels, I also want you to know you don't have to. If jhana is interesting, great, but some people have this idea that you have to do that to have significant experiences, and you just don't. That's not my experience. So have fun and know that it's not like if you don't have deep jhanic experiences, you can't progress dramatically with meditation. So lovely. Okay, any other questions, reports, interests, things arising that you don't understand? Why would it be like this? Let me know. I realized there was something that came up recently, and I was like, oh, I think I might have to cut the stream short on Mondays for like a few weeks. Oh yeah, there is something that I'm trying to participate in. This is, okay, let me take a peek here at my calendarina. Okay, good, we're in good shape. Beep, up, up, beep, up, up. Okay, here we go. We have a new comment here from Julia Temple. Well, good to hear from you, Julia says. Oops, that is not the right plugin. This is the plugin.
Can the Culadasa thing teach us anything about practice itself? Like, some say that people in late stages of TMI are at risk of their concentration power turning into the power to repress.
Okay, great. So I just want to clue folks in. So Culadasa is a meditation teacher. He invented a system called the Mind Illuminated. It's very sort of structured and procedural, and sort of purports to be like pure stages that everybody goes through. It's like this universally, which many systems purport that. So I don't want to say that it isn't like that. I'm generally skeptical of systems that say it's going to be like this for everybody, but you know, hey, what the heck? It's a system that works very well. I borrow pieces from that when I talk about attention and awareness. While those are parts of my practice before, he clarified it in a way that's lovely, and I like that, so I use that in the way that I guide. But a lot of his system I do not use, just because I find it easier to move people along in different ways. But attention and awareness and balancing the two is an important sort of way that he describes some of the stuff. So what I want to, so that's his system that he came up with. I think it was in 2000, when was it, 17, 2019? I forget when it was, not long ago. He was, a letter came out from the board of his organization that said that he had acted morally inappropriately with, that he had solicited prostitutes, that he had been unfaithful to his wife, and that he had spoken untruths, that he had lied. And because he had taken a sort of, not a monastic vow, but he'd taken like a lay practitioner's vow that was, you know, more significant than just your average person on the street, he was being held to a very high standard. And after that happened, after that unfolded, there were a series of sort of like question mark things where he came out with a statement that said a big apology and said, hey, I'm really sorry that this happened. And then he retracted that and said, that's not, I shouldn't have apologized because I really didn't do anything wrong, and et cetera, et cetera. And so recently, Culadasa released, and this was for years, and it was sort of the general sense from people is that he didn't quite give a satisfying answer, or at least that was my experience, and it seemed like a lot of people's experience. And it was also that his answers as they came out, they would sort of contradict the previous moment, and he would say, this is how it was, and then he would make some statement. And it's also, he would make these sort of private statements, which, I mean, he's a public figure, so they don't stay private terribly long. So he'd make a statement to a small group of people, and then people would say, wait a minute, like, this sounds like you're saying this thing that doesn't really sound right, doesn't sort of jive. And he recently, the sort of net result right now at least, is that he recently put out a statement that was 33 pages long that describes the entire scenario from his perspective in monstrous detail. And it's tough because, okay, so that's just the general case. He wrote a response to say, like, you know, basically what it's saying that I did wrong was not what I did wrong. What I did wrong was this other thing, which is much more forgivable. So this is how it happened. So that's the breakdown of this question that that Julia is asking. What is up with those? Is it possible to learn something from those? Is it possible that our concentration can get to a place where we could actually repress things that are important to know about? So part of me wants to immediately render what I think about the situation and sort of it's a little tough for me to do that. I feel like it's slightly inappropriate as a sort of just individual. I could say, this is how I feel, that's how I feel. But it's weird because from my perspective, as minor of a public figure as I am actually, I mean, right now we're talking live and anyone can watch this. So I am very careful about what I say. So I, for one thing, want to say that I, obviously denounce any, inappropriate sexual behavior by anyone in any position of power or not. That is, highly inappropriate, and I really do push against that in any way that we can. The next question is that the view of that's what happened with Culadasa? His view is no, that is not the case. The board of his organization, they put out their letter, whatever. I just want to zoom out for a minute and say my experience of this whole thing is that it's gross and it's yucky, and I don't like it, and I don't like interacting with it, and it makes me feel like, I had sort of given part of myself to, I was not a big devotee, but I had sort of given part of myself to this experience and this set of practices and trusting this person to some degree, and now I'm like, this is weird, and usually people that I trust and like and look to don't have all these weird things swirling around them. So that said, I'm not going to, it would be very hard for me to say I know the truth or I know what the moral judgment is. It does feel yucky. I'll also say that I don't think it was handled terribly well by Culadasa. I think that he could have gotten clarity before he moved forward. And I'll then finally say that, I like Culadasa. We've met before. We've had some chance to talk. I did an interview with him that I've actually never published, where he actually talks about sexuality and talks about how, you could be morally really stable with your sex, drives, and this is before any of this stuff happened, which was sort of, the irony is pretty high, but the question is, could we learn from it? Absolutely, we can learn from it. I think one of the things to remember is that there are different verticals of development, personal development, and we could be extremely, extremely developed in our mind and in our meditation, and be bad with our diet. We've seen this where there'll be some guru or some person who's very, very good at meditating, very good at guiding other people, and they're just not taking care of their body, sometimes in the form of eating too many calories or whatever, and sometimes in the form of starving themselves to death. These kind of things happen. There are also, there's lots of verticals that we could be good at. They're probably not terribly good at basketball. They might not be very good at, concert singing or something. So we have all these ways that we can develop ourselves. Morality, yes, it is affected by all of these other verticals, but it is to some degree independent. So you want to be with somebody who is developing and cultivating those at all times. You also want to be in a place where there's a very solid feedback loop as a teacher, so that people can say, hey, this thing seems problematic, and you have a system in place where you can listen to that. So part of it is what we can learn is community-wise is that we need to have really strong feedback systems in place. Also, his claim in his letter, which it's an uncharitable version of it, and I don't think this is the case, but part of me has this sort of concern that an uncharitable version of what he's describing, what he's outlining in his video, in his letter, is almost to exhaust the reader. There's just so many it's like the math problem that has all the extra components in it, and it's I don't know, I don't think this was a conscious attempt, but it definitely has the effect of it definitely makes it possible for people to say, well, what do you think about the situation? It's I don't know, I didn't read the whole 33 pages. Well, it is quite repetitive. I mean, honestly, it's dramatically repetitive. It could be edited down to, 3 pages and probably contain most of what's in there. So I don't think that was intentional to try to wear down the reader, but that is part of what the intent, or not the intent, the impact was on me. It took me several readings to get through it. Also, his statements tend to gear towards what seems to me hey, this thing that was morally wrong, I didn't do that thing because that would be bad, but I did this thing that was also morally wrong, but it's not as bad. So let's focus on this, and this is what I did. The thing that he's saying that he did do that was a mistake and he should have done better, it's tough for me because every piece that he lays out that he did do, that he admits that he did do, is all actually these humble brags. I was just too, I was too accepting of other people, and I was too much of I would just, go ahead with whatever people wanted just to make them feel better. I was just too much in that direction. I've learned that in therapy and with my life coach. And, there's this whole list of things that are like, okay, these are the things that I did. I was too trusting. Wow, I was just too trusting. So for me, it's tough because I see, all of us have the potential to do harm. All of us have the potential to, to have these things in our life. And to me, it's more about like whether it's a pattern that keeps happening over and over again. This person doesn't have any ability to look at what's happening and then change. I don't know. That for me is more of the issue. And his claim is that, what is the piece that he claims? The claim is that the core problem was he had an open relationship with his wife. And when they confronted him with this, it slipped his mind because he was so awakened. Again, all this stuff is like, I would love if it were really accurate and true, but he was so deeply sort of profoundly awakened that he just didn't think of like the narrative of saying like, oh yeah, I just want to mention, or at that time it just didn't come up, like they're asking these things and they're unrelated, so I just didn't put together the pieces that, of course, I should say, hey, you guys know that we have an open relationship, right? We've come to an agreement. And that didn't come up, and it's sort of like, it seemed like that came up as he sort of realized it himself. So maybe he was just a blank slate, deeply, transparent to the universe, and his mind wouldn't pull the pieces together. And then when he needed to defend himself, he like reorganized the pieces and was like, oh yeah, you guys know this fact, right? Hey, listen, that's a possibility. That would require, for me at least, to go against Occam's razor, and just the fact that like he's justifying the fact that maybe they didn't have an open relationship. Maybe they did, but they had only talked about it like 4 years ago, or some period of time, and it was no longer like very clear or whatever. He says that they were very open about it, and he was like, yeah, this is what's up, but it is really his perspective. And I can really, having been in relationships throughout my life and friendships and family, I could imagine a scenario where he's like, yeah, this is a known factor. We're in an open relationship, and his wife doesn't quite feel that way or know that piece, etc. Either way, it's a little bit messy. Transparency wise, I think if somebody is part of a large community and is doing something that is ethically not even bad, but questionable, not even questionable like it's wrong, but questionable like often people would look at that and say, I want to know more about that. It would probably be best if this person said that out loud and said, hey guys, I'm this meditation teacher. I was sort of, a meditation teacher, and this book came out. I became much more famous. And I also want you to know that part of my life is that I live in an open marriage. It's my own personal business, but that's what's up. Leave me alone. It's my own private life. That would have been an extremely helpful factoid, that one sentence, but that's not what happened. So can it help us? And then the next question is it possible to develop our meditation skill to the point where we can be delusional? Absolutely, 100%. So here's an example. We do something that's wrong, or we do something that's questionable, and we feel shame, or we feel guilt, right? Guilt, good, shame, bad. I like this differentiation. Shame is feeling bad for something. Guilt is feeling bad for something I've done. Shame is feeling bad for something that I am, and there's something wrong with me fundamentally. I don't believe that is true about humans. There's not something wrong with anyone fundamentally. We make mistakes, we make unskillful decisions, etc. So, but if we are sort of so tuned in with the primordial perfection of existing that pain arises, physical pain arises, we just see through it and we see that it's transparent and it's no longer affecting us, it no longer is driving the way we make our decisions. Clinging and aversion, all these things just begin to become ethereal, things that are just, this atmosphere that comes and goes. It has no grip on us. Well, the same thing can happen with our guilt or our shame. But we'll stick with guilt for now. So guilt being the skillful side of, oof, I've done something wrong, I need to correct this. it is totally possible to have that arise and say, oh, look at it, it's transparent. I actually don't need to do anything about this. This thing that feels bad about what I've just done, I don't really want to take action around that. So that's dangerous. What's even more dangerous is if the system is so used to metabolizing anything uncomfortable that arises that it can't recognize that uncomfortable sensation as guilt. It just says, it's morning time. I think I'll have a drink of coffee, and there's different sensations occurring. And all right, it's time to go do this other thing. And the system justifies whatever happened because it doesn't feel so bad, and we just move along. This is part of why we need to have people in our community who know about what's happening in our lives, who can reflect back to us and be like, wait a minute, hold on here, like this seems specific and important. Because, so for me, I entered into recovery for substance abuse 17 years ago. In fact, what month is it? Next month will be 17 years. That is just a fact. I don't want to sugarcoat that. I can blame it on my childhood, rough childhood. I used substances to manage emotions. At some point, the system was just like, cool, we'll just get really used to this, and the system, did. So I couldn't manage life without using, drinking or smoking pot or getting high or whatever. And at some point, I realized I needed support for that. What happens in certain recovery communities, especially the one that I'm involved in, is there's a lot of reflecting. You talk to people about what's going on. You are completely honest with more than one person. You're completely honest with the person who's guiding you through the process. You're completely honest with your friends, and you just talk about really what's happening. And before you make any major decision that is morally questionable, and they're pretty clear about morality, it's the central driving force of how I recovered, is to really look at yourself from a moral lens over and over and over and over again. You talk to people about it, you talk to people about it, you talk to people about it. And so I can't see my own blind spots. So if we think of it like, okay, I'm looking this way, I can see this much, but I can't see behind me, right? I have no ability to. But if I look at you and you look at me, we can see each other's blind spots, and I can tell you what's happening in your blind spot, and you can tell me what's happening in my blind spot. That right there is the foundation of how recovery works, is two people or more working together to see each other's blind spots. The challenge is in that the mind is very tricky, and so the mind will tell you, no, this is fine. Maybe you don't even need to tell anyone about this, or maybe you already did. Maybe you talked to someone about this a long time ago. You don't need to talk about it again. And the system will sort of send you into these loops of sort of delusion, and they call it the mental blank spot. And you're like, no, it's fine. In terms of substance use, someone will be like, it's fine. I can take a drink. It's New Year's Eve or something like that. And it doesn't think about, wait a minute, like this has not worked many times over. So you check with somebody else. They say, that sounds like faulty reasoning. And then you move forward. So the big key is to really, really stay up to date with somebody else who knows you and you're accountable to. So what's the term that Shinzen uses? It's something accountability structures. If someone remembers, tell me in the chat. It's objectively oriented support and accountability structure, I think he talks about. So, a therapist or in some recovery communities, they have sponsors or, close set of friends, these kind of things, ideally more than one, ideally several. And so that's generally, for me, my perspective is that's how you manage these things. And organizationally, as an organization or meditation organization expands, as a student, you should be able to go up and say, hey, what is your structure? What do you do? If someone hypothetically comes up and says this terrible thing happened, what happens? Who talks to who? What is? And often people will be like, I guess you do this, or and as organizations scale, they often don't keep that. That system does not scale along with it. And with all that unconsciousness, all those blank spots, things can happen in that and nobody knows that it even occurred. So that's a challenge to do it personally, and let alone to build it into an organization. So that's quite a challenge. So Julia, hopefully that answers your question. I see here that you're, it just throws me off. It just throws me off because he always went on about how extremely helpful meditation is with morality. It really is. But I think it's, for me, this is maybe parsing words, I think it's the other way around. I am personally, and I know I want to say this because I feel like sometimes I forget this, but I'm personally more dedicated to morality than to meditation. Does that mean I don't make mistakes? Heck no. I get big arguments with my wife, and I get frustrated with my puppy, and like all of these normal human things, like ordinary human experiences. And for me, if I had to pick one for my life and for bringing less suffering to myself and others, it would be morality, 100%. Morality is actually more core to having a fulfilling life and to really living in a way that's very powerful than meditation. I know that, at least from my experience, for sure, because in recovery programs, I know a lot of people who have very strong morality, really strong morality, and they don't really meditate. And they live these very rich, powerful lives. And then I know plenty of people, meditation communities, where people are really good at meditation, and they're just, morality, man, maybe it comes, it goes, whatever. I mean, I guess I try to be a good person. It's like what do they say? Like, yeah, like Jesus, like, I'll do all the stuff that's easy, and the stuff that's hard I don't really believe in. It's like, well, that's where the rubber hits the road. So, and if I look at these two communities, which one generally is more fulfilled, and which one has more like moral compass, or not moral compass, but has more of like a sense of a mooring, like their lives are like stable, and they want their lives, and they feel good in their lives, it's the people who focus on morality by far. So my experience is that morality is the basis on which meditation grows, and that doesn't make anybody perfect. So it's also hard to recognize the other side, that no matter how skilled somebody is, and I think this is important for us to know, no matter how skilled somebody is, they never transcend human. And there's a part of us that wants our teachers to transcend human. It wants our teachers to be gods. And just for a minute, it's helpful, I would encourage people to notice the part of us that wants that. That part of us is denying, this is just my take, is denying our own humanity. It's saying, I could be a god. I could be free of all the bounds of being a human. And this is a big problem that comes up in meditation communities, because there's this sense of, okay, there's my life, there's the problems within my life, and I'm going to do meditation, and it's going to eliminate my problems. Or if there is problems, I just won't care, and I'll be good. And there's a sense that meditation is going to pay my taxes. Meditation is going to teach me how to, meet my partner's needs. It could give us leverage, but it is not going to teach us to do that. It is not going to make sure that we pay our taxes. So there has to be this other side of life, which is the, living our lives well, and living our lives, in integrity, and letting those two inform each other. And I think that often people are really good on the transcendent side and not on the relative life side. And typically, if someone tends to refer to one more than the other, it's usually the teacher's role to say, hey, let's go to the other one. If you're really good at meditation, let's go to the life, improvement side. If you're really good at the life improvement side, hey, let's go to the transcendent side. Let's talk about this expansive, non-existence that could inform every aspect of our being. The good news is they really, really play together well, and they really, really inform each other really deeply. So that's my personal experience. That's my take on that situation. So hopefully that is helpful, interesting, and useful. Let's go back here. There's a bunch of comments, so maybe there's some comments related to this exact thing. Okay, going back here. Wow, there's a lot of comments. Okay, so forgive me. Denny, I'm going to get to your reports here, and ping me if I'm incorrect. And I'm just zipping through. Okay, I just want to do ones that are related to this topic before I do that, because I want, if someone watches the playback, I want them to see all these parts first before having to jump around to reports. So Exalted H3 Bro says,
"Are feelings felt somatically if the mind or ego is suppressing them? I think I've heard something about if the feeling, for example sadness, cannot be felt normally crying, it will be somaticized tightness in the chest. Does this make sense?"
I would say that you can 100% experience emotion somatically and have it not be pain. And this is sometimes what's called purification. And I'll just tell you, from a mechanical point of view, observing from, sometimes they'll call it the witness state, but basically observing from awareness makes suffering turn into just sensation. And actually the sensation can feel like, it's very crass to be like, oh, better than an orgasm, but like honestly, like more like, oh my God, like the greatest feeling you've ever had, more than, any good sensation is actually feeling the pain completely without any resistance. That's extremely powerful. So it is possible to feel the emotion, not abnormally, not normally, and have that be a transformative experience. And then your question is like, if you don't feel the emotion, it'll become somatically held. Yes, I think it is true. If you do not feel an emotion, if you do not allow it to be felt, it will become somatically held and begin to compress in the body and become old emotion and have that contractive quality of like these overwhelming, intense emotions in the body. Somatically held emotion usually correlated with developmental trauma. And the but feeling it from that witness state also counts. The thing there we have to worry about or be concerned about is, are we just morally sort of unmoored because we don't now have the feedback loop of pain to guide us in whether we did something right or wrong? The problem is often, most of the time probably, we have these pains and difficulties in situations that are unrelated to life. We're like worried about things that aren't happening, or we feel self-conscious or guilty about things we either didn't do or we did do like 10 years ago. So either way, there's that distortion, but I think it's almost by default better that the system overfeels emotion than underfeels emotion, or overfeels guilt than underfeels. Like if you put this across the society and we just wipe away guilt, it's probably not going to be very good. So it's better that we feel too much unnecessary guilt. So hopefully that makes sense and relates to the topic here. Other topic related things here. Answer the question. Okay, these are great insight questions, and I just want to wait till we get through this topic. Julie says, also, does this mean that I should be cautious about using stuff from TMI? Yes and no. Yes, you should be cautious because we want to generally be protective about what we take in. And I don't think that means that the content of TMI, the Mind Illuminated, is bad in any way. In fact, it's very strong material. It's also helpful to know that it's covered in many other systems. So Rupert Spira is another example of somebody who covers a lot of the exact same ground, with I did less of like a sort of punchy, this is the thematic, like you're going from here to here, stage this, stage that, not in the same structure. So it is covered other places. I personally, it's tough for me because it's like publicly and privately. Privately, if I just had a friend and it's like, hey, you might want to take a look at this. This is good technique, good meditation, balancing attention and awareness, letting that become an absorption, etc. I like that part. I use that part all the time for whatever that's worth. And I don't use a lot of the parts though. And so I have other reasons why I actually sometimes don't recommend that people do TMI, which you might see actually is related to the whole controversy thing that happened. Very common for teachers to do, and this is something that brings up alarm bells every time I hear it, is a teacher will talk in a way, and I just reading the introduction to the Mind Illuminated, I was like, this is like screaming this. They speak in absolutes, and they speak in a way that puts themselves at the center of the universe. And this might sound like very dramatic, but it's very common, extremely common. And teachers basically use the words like always, every time. It's, universal. It's consistent for everybody. This is how it is. And that is, it draws people in. It makes people really like, yes, yes, yes. But it also is, if anyone is sort of honest, it's dramatically untrue for many, many people. And we have this huge confirmation bias because the people that it works for stick around and they say, hey, it's working for me. And the people it doesn't work for are like, this doesn't work for me. And they disappear. And all the teacher sees are all these people that it works for. And so teachers will talk from this position and say, my technique is the best. There is one, basically, they're implying there's one true technique and it happens to be mine, which is very lucky because those two facts, if there was one true technique and it was somebody else's, well, I would look like a real idiot up here telling you that you should pay attention to me. My personal position is that there are many, many techniques and they're all excellent within their own context. And my job as a teacher is to guide people and see the different pieces and see what works for them individually. That's generally my case. So from that perspective, TMI is great if we can look at it as a piece within a context of other practices. If we look at it as its own contained little, maze that you can get lost within, I mean, it's just as good as any other system, I suppose. But I hate that thing that people get lost within the system, and the system doesn't tell you, hey, there's other things to take a look at. So, for instance, Goenka, excellent meditation technology. The 10-day Vipassana retreats. All of this stuff is on recordings. You don't even need the individual sort of stuff from a teacher. It will impact you. It'll have a big effect. But they also say, do not pay attention to other meditation techniques. Only do ours. Ours is the technique. It is, and they kind of literally say, this is the one true technique. This is the technique that the Buddha did, which there's zero academic support for. Zero. And I'd say that being very generous. There's none. If you know of some, let me know. There's nothing more than 4 generations back or 3 generations back, indicating maybe, I don't know, I guess maybe generations, maybe 4, but indicating that this was something that is traditional in Buddhism, which is fine, because actually I like things that are non-traditional, because guess what? That's called innovative. So, Wandra Joe says, I personally don't think so. We're referring to TMI. I like the insights from TMI. Okay. Exalted Bro says, just because he did something bad doesn't invalidate all his teachings. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Well, I want to say 2 things. One is, on one hand, yes, don't do that from an ultimate sense. But from another sense, sometimes we as people, and this is a valid position to have, we need to feel secure. We need to feel like what's being given to us is safe or is just stable. And I think that we need to respect each other. I think that some people who are like, I need to feel really sort of safe with somebody and not feel like there's a creepy, weird, I don't know, something about that. I need to feel that. So you should feel that too, and you should just not like his system. It's like, well, that's not fair. And the same is the other way around. I find that when you look at these online forums, it's often people being like, you shouldn't feel that way. I mean, I guess it's a little tit for tat, because one person's saying you shouldn't feel that way, the other person's saying you're wrong, you shouldn't feel that way. But I think it's respectable to say, hey, you could try to not throw out the baby with the bathwater, but there's a lot of bathwater out there. You know what I mean? There's a lot of opportunities to grow. So don't think that, this particular bathwater is godlike, and, if you just choose to ignore it, you won't have a very rich and powerful meditation practice, which, right, if there's a community of people who are dedicated to the fact that this is the one true practice, well, that's very threatening. The idea that there could be other practices out there, it's scary. It's like, oh no, that can't be the truth, because I've been into this idea that this is the one true path. The idea that there is one true path is valuable right up until the point when it is the obstruction. So even if the way I guide people, it's like a mix of Shinzen and non-dual practice and a little mind illuminated and a little bit of Mahasi tradition of the path. I'm very clear that there comes a point when even the sense that there is a path or a place to move is the obstruction. So no matter what, every system, any good system, should self-destruct. So for me, that's the general case. Let's see. Julie Temple says, it just throws me off because he's extremely helpful. Okay, you mentioned that. You said it's helpful with morality. Let's get the computer to read these because they're getting longer. Denny says,
I agree. Personally, I'd take his path, with more grains of salt, but his mental models, frameworks, awareness versus attention, subtle versus gross distraction, dullness, are still useful for me.
Yeah. Denny says, Lee Bracington is pretty good. Speaking of probabilities when discussing outcomes. Yeah, probabilities, I think, is a much better way to talk about it. Like, many people are like this. And you can hear details like that in the way people talk. Often it's like this. You want to see a real... This is one of my highest bars. It's very uncommon of a teacher. For me, if they can talk from a meta-systemic point of view, they will openly and happily talk about the downsides of their own system and the upsides of other people's system. Because typically, for marketing purposes or ego inflation purposes, teachers usually talk about the good parts of their practice and the bad parts of other people's practice. You see how when I present this thing and this thing, if you put those two things together, it looks pretty bad and I'm pretty good, right? It's like, sure, like I could talk about the good qualities of eating rocks and the bad qualities of like having going on a summer vacation and see, it's like, if you zoom out enough, it's always that everything if you know Buddhism, you know that everything has qualities that are pleasant and qualities that are unpleasant. Most of the qualities are neutral. So when you see someone framing things like that, rings an alarm bell. And if you can see someone talk about their own system and say, here are the downsides of mine and the upsides of somebody else's, that often to me is an indication that you're now dealing with an actual metasystemic teacher. Very rare, very highly valued in my book. Shinzen is like kind of the person par excellence, and a lot of the metasystemic teachers that I admire were Shinzen students or are like, interact with Shinzen heavily. Julia Temple says, super helpful. Thanks for the comments. Thank you. Okay, I think this is related to this topic. Exalted Bro says,
this whole meditation business really is in part a huge project of finding the diamond in the bag of glass. There's so much BS out there, and unfortunately we need to dig through that.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. And I think part of the challenge is that when we begin, we don't know where to begin. And so if somebody comes and sounds very, very clear, and they're like, this is the truth, and it might be the truth for a bunch of people, it feels so good. Oh my God, it's like, oh, it's so true. It's so true. And we want to believe that. We want to, because a lot of life is seeking and seeking. We just, God damn, want to take a rest. I just need a break. Can't we just like trust this person? I mean, he speaks with massive authority. And I say he because this is a very, gendered tendency, as men will often speak with a lot of assuredness and not necessarily, not necessarily accurately. And forgive me if that's, if that's offensive to anybody, but it just tends to be the case. Men will be like, this is, and, speak over people and that kind of thing. It is just a fact. So something to watch out for. And that is exactly it. We have to sift through, and part of I want to even hint at the idea that, whether I love the TMI folks, they're so sweet and they're often great meditators, you know what I mean? So I'm using this metaphor, but like really, I hope I don't offend anybody. In a situation, okay, so if you, here's what I'll say. If you took sort of the way TMI is structured and you kind of like pushed it way beyond recognition, way away from where it was. If you go far enough, it's a contained system that tells you don't exit the system, and within the system is all the things that you need, and more or less don't exit. This is where it all happens. At the ultimate extreme end would be some kind of radicalization, like something that was like some sort of like a cult or something. Again, not saying these two are connected. I'm saying if you take this idea and expand it beyond recognition. So we want to, how do you get people out of that situation? So it's an extreme situation over here, TMI, not that extreme. So if we can get people out of this extreme situation, or what is the remedy here? Maybe it would apply to any meditation community. You get folks to have contact with other communities, right? People can't stay in that sort of limited view if they just talk to other people, which is hard to do, because I don't want to talk to other people. I want to talk to people who share my language. Talk to other people, reason things out, have a view, come from a perspective that everybody is right within their context, and the key is to understand their context. From that perspective, our view of the world becomes much richer. And after the initial, loss of orientation, we have a perspective from which we can navigate much more life from that perspective. I personally, anyone who knows me knows that my biggest sort of single influence is Shinzen Young, in part because it's like, a good graduate program is going to teach you how to think. And I think that that's what he gave me. I don't really teach his system very exactly the way he teaches it, but it's how to think. And part of that perspective is to respect all of the systems. And no one would dedicate this much time and energy to a system unless it actually worked. So within the context of their system, it's perfect. The problem is that every context breaks down because life is not neat like that. We do enough meditation to know that life is extremely messy. So we want to start to notice all the contexts and how they overlap, and how these people explain these set of phenomena, how these people explain these set of phenomena, and how these come together in a simple way that makes my life more fulfilling. And for me, with Shinzen, the drive is actually about bringing meditation into every aspect of my life and developing specific meditations that are personal to my aspirations and goals and interest. So while watching the breath, this is a real moral lesson. Which one of these do we think would help more in our lives if we wanted to have better relationships and know ourselves and know what was important to us more as an object of meditation? Just mechanically, watching our breath, watching our emotions. It's pretty obvious that watching our emotions would give us way more data on what does it mean to exist as a human being interacting with the world, watching our emotions as we're having a conversation, watching our emotions, when things happen that don't work for us, etc. Shinzen's thing is not like watch your emotions. Shinzen's thing is watch everything, break it down atomically, observe it piece by piece, etc. So he wants you to get good at watching your emotions, watching the visual part of the mind, the audio part of the mind, watching the different qualities, like very, particular, and then put the whole thing together. And then get good at all these other techniques and get good at, these different parts and pieces. And what that means is we can bring practice into every part of our life, which now, I'm making a sales pitch for Shinzen. So notice I'm talking about the positive side of my technique and the negative side of someone else's technique. So there's a little kettle calling, pot calling the kettle black, but I'll revamp that in a minute. I'll tell you why Shinzen's system is not great after this. It's a numbers game. Meditation is a numbers game. The path of awakening is a numbers game. So if we meditate for an hour every day and then charge up the battery and then drain the battery throughout the day and then charge up the battery and drain the battery, well, that's fine, but we're fighting the other 23 hours of the day. Versus if we learn to actually meditate in all of our interactions, when we're talking with somebody else or when we're having an argument or when we're cleaning the dishes, and that's actually a big part of the practice, is how do I bring this into every aspect of my life? Well, now we have a lot of advantage with the numbers game. It is much more, it's going to propel us more quickly from my experience. But again, the downside, now watch, hopefully I can adequately describe the downside of Shinzen's system. It is way too complex, way too many moving parts. I start with people and I say, listen, you're going to have to effectively hold your breath, because for the first 3 months that we work together, we're just going to be doing introductory techniques, showing you, make sure you can observe sound really carefully. You can observe the sound of the mind. Make sure you can observe the visual part of the mind. Make sure you can observe emotions in the body. Can you tell emotions moving? Can you tell, all of these different parts? And so there's a really sharp learning curve. So you're going to lose so many people there. Also, his system, because it takes in so many systems, his system is a system of systems. It rounds the corners. It takes out a lot of the detail of all these systems because it can't hold all those details, because it is a metasystemic view. So if you do Shinzen's system, you can have a distorted view of what the systems that it's referring to are, which is absolutely a problem. There are solutions to those problems, but I just want to emphasize that it is not the perfect system for everyone. In fact, it tends to be kind of a minority system, his way of doing stuff. It doesn't attract the most people, and I don't think he's ever been that into getting the most people. It's more the people who are nerdy and really want that kind of thing. So that's my little contrast of those two things. Hopefully that gives a little bit of context to this very big question. Can we learn from the experience with Culadasa? And my TLDR for the entire thing is, and this I'll try to summarize everything I said. Every experience we can have as a human being is a doorway to awakening. And we can choose any meditation object we want. We can choose the breath, we can choose sound, we can choose etc. For me, I think, why not choose the objects that are directly aligned with the kind of life that I want to have? So for instance, I can use the situation with Culadasa and piece by piece look at all the different facets of that if I want to grow from that. So we can take any experience and grow from it. So can we learn something from it? Yes, because we can learn something from any aspect of any human experiencing. My general position is find the things that align with our values and have our path of awakening be very personally aligned with what is important to us. That is like the core of the way that I teach. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's interesting. But P.S., if you have any questions, of course, let us know. And if you're watching this on playback, let us know in the comments questions that you have, anything like that. Happy to answer anything that I can. Folks, lovely to be here with you. You know what? I have news for you. We're actually going to be back here on this very live stream in less than 48 hours. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, answering your questions. And you know what I realized before I break? Denny, I didn't get to your meditation report. So if you're watching this in the playback, we're going to do some meditation reports now. Thank you for joining. Love to see you here soon. There's links to the live stream in the video description below. Denny, here's your report from your meditation. Denny says,
"This overall awareness has always been elusive for me. I believe this is due to clinging to wanting to know if I am doing it right. This generally results in my attention zooming into various parts of experience to make sure that my awareness is capturing everything. Even though I know that's not how it works. When you mentioned how light awareness feels, I noticed this tranquil sensation of release started to arise."
Oh, so lovely. So, okay, you have another comment right here. So let me get both together so that if I'm missing something.
Yet what quickly happens is that these sensations then begin to become their own parts. Partly due to clinging to how pleasant those feelings are.
Great. So first I also want to say thank you so much for Anonymous Cheerer for cheering 100 bits. Very kind of you. Much appreciated. If anyone's here and hasn't followed, please follow. It's super fun and we have a good time. So we have, I see the follower count, we have 398 followers. So that's awesome. And P.S., 2 people follow. If there's anyone watching this who are not following, 2 people follow, you hit the 400 number. So I don't know if that's motivating. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that motivates you, but hey, what the hell. Okay, so the mind tends to prefer. That's just like one of the natures of the mind. It prefers this, it prefers that, it prefers to understand, it prefers to feel good. Like the mind, I want to feel good versus not feel good. The mind just tends to prefer. That's what we call clinging and aversion. That is the nature of the system pushing and pulling in our experience. When I describe parts and whole, the mind is constantly taking the whole, this big mass of sense data, and dividing it into little parts. This is what we call self and world. This is dualism, right? The world divided into a million parts. So there's this sort of joke that I'll say sometimes, like the ultimate non-dualism is dualism. Like the ultimate non-duality is to know that all of these parts that are broken up are actually part of the whole. That it's the same material. It's just sort of arranged differently. In different configurations of self and world and solidity, etc. But it's just the same material. It's just awareness and sense data dancing together, and it comes in the form of a video I'm watching or whatever. Just the mind arranging the same data set. So the key is not awareness good, objects bad, right? That is just another kind of duality. The key is to notice, look, both are natural. Nature. So if you find yourself being like, I want it to be like X, recognize that wanting is not bad. Clinging is not bad. I know that sounds like crazy, especially from a Buddhist perspective. Clinging is not bad. Clinging is clinging. Clinging is nature. It is the nature of the mind to cling. How do we break free of the bonds of craving and aversion that torture humans? To see it and say, yes, I see you. Welcome. I see the clinging. Oh, look, and there's part of me that wants it to be different. Look at that part. It wants things to be like this. Of course you do. I understand that you would want that. I see that you've had this whole human life and now you want this thing to be different than it is. I see you. I see you. If we can't, there's the object and then there's a conceptual layer on top. This is one of the best formulations I've ever heard. Our goal is to be able to see the object of meditation, our raw sense data, without a conceptual layer on top. Sounds pretty good, standard Buddhist data, right? Okay, that's a good formulation. But the more advanced position, using that word lightly, let's say the deeper understanding or deeper knowledge of that same insight is that conceptual layer, the craving, the wanting, or the just visual mental layer, audio mental layer, the selfing that's on top of the raw sense data is just raw sense data. There is nothing but raw data. So we just start to see, yes, there is clinging. It's nature. Welcome, welcome. There it is. The system doesn't want this, and it doesn't want that. It doesn't want this. I see you. Welcome. This is nature. To recognize that there is no escape from just nature. Whatever we're experiencing is the nature of existing. And by having that perspective and cultivating that over time, showing ourselves that fact over time, eventually the system settles out into the nature of awareness, which is sometimes called Buddha nature, right? This kind of awareness. I don't want to call it the witness state. There's a little bit of a remove there, but the Buddha nature that is infusing all of our experiencing, that is the deepest, truth. So mechanically, how do you actually do that? Whatever you notice, look, the system is wanting. That's fine. Don't not want the not wanting, right? Oh, look, the system is wanting or not wanting. I see you. Welcome, welcome, clinging, welcome. And it gives it nothing to hold on to. Oh, I want it to be like this. Suddenly it just has no space, and it's just like something floating in the water with no wall to kick off of. It's just like, oh, okay, there's some wanting. And then it just dissipates because it has nothing to grab onto. It can't perpetuate. It can't, perpetuate. It can't keep going because there's no ground. Hopefully that helps, clarifies, makes sense. Let's see. Is there any other comments here popping in? Okay, here's, so an anonymous cheerer gave 100 bits, thank you, and then Exalted Bro says the following.
I had that same problem as that report, and I found an easy solution. Just say to yourself, I already know, and leave it at that.
That's great. I mean, I already, another way of saying the exact same words is just say, of course, of course. And I personally like to have a little bit of welcoming, like, yeah, of course, I see you, like I see you. Often these things, emotions, etc., they just want to be seen. So we just see it, I see you, okay, I see you. You already know everything is possible for you to know in that moment, or need to dig, and no need to dig further. Excellent, super helpful, great. Okay, so folks, I have a wish. I'm gonna make a wish like it was a goddamn birthday cake over here. So wish for you. A wish as follows, folks. In this particular moment, right here, right now, in your lovely environment, just to take in your experience. And to notice that the mind is pulled towards parts at times, and you can take an overall experience at times, and neither one of these is better. If you or some part of you thinks that in experiences, one is better, awareness better, parts better, jhana better, non-dual better, whatever it is, notice that part that thinks one of them is better, and instead of pushing it away, let's just accept that. Welcome. Welcome, dividing part. Welcome. Clinging. Hey, what's up, buddy? I remember you. You've clung my whole life. Welcome. And then this way, letting this particular moment be the key, the decoder ring that shows us how we can navigate this complex, layered world, noticing that the mind zooms in at times, zooms out at times, and that this is simply a flexing, a movement of the same primordial material, the same universal goo, the spatial, soft, light awareness, and that awareness organizing into objects that divide and split the world, melt away back into awareness and become new objects. Notice our sense of continuity, our sense of this moment moving to the next moment, our sense of time, our sense of self, our sense of narrative of which we are the central player. And in all of these, simply recognizing this as data, just another shape, another constellation, another natural expected contraction of the mind creating a world through which it can navigate. How else would a mind that has no limit navigate a world without creating one? This is the weird, fun, exciting world of meditation that we get to be part of. So even if there's a little gratitude in there somewhere for just being able to participate in this lovely world, noticing that too is a particle, a valuable one, letting it be part of this larger whole of human experiencing, and in that way letting that gratitude shape, frame, and color this particular moment. So folks, as always, practice well, take care of each other, have fun, and we will see you all very, very soon.